What's up, everyone? Hockey Time here, back for another week of NHL Power Rankings, and we had a wild one this week. Lots of shaking up that was done. Didn't really realize just how crazy this week was until yesterday when I kind of finalized this list after the Friday night games, and there was some movement to say the least. So we're going to dive right into it with a brand new team at 32, their first time all year, dropping 6 spots. The Arizona Coyotes. This team 0-3 on the week. They're 0-9-1 in their last 10. I could not validate keeping any of the other teams below them, despite the fact that they're still well above some of these teams in the standing. It has been a brutal, brutal run for Arizona. This is without Connor Ingram. Karl Vejmelka has been struggling quite a bit. They had an NHL debut for one of their AHL goalies. I'm forgetting his name, so apologies for that. But it's just been a rough couple weeks for Arizona, but this week kind of culminated that. And I felt that it was appropriate to have them at 32, despite the fact that some of the teams, again, below them in the standings are still nowhere near passing them. Number 31, moving up a spot and beneficiary of Arizona's rough last couple weeks, is Chicago. They go 1-2-1 on the week, 1-7-2 in their last 10. So by no means has it been pretty for Chicago either, but they're not 0-9-1 in their last 10, and they at least won a game this week. So better stuff from the Hawks. Bedard being back has definitely made their games more watchable, but it hasn't exactly made the results a whole lot better. He, had a good couple points after his return, but has since slowed down a touch. It's only been a few games, so not overly concerned about him there, but just in general, not too much going on for the Hawks. At number 30, the same spot as the week prior, is San Jose. They go 0-2 on the week. They're 5-4-1 in their last 10, so it's been a decent little stretch for them, all things considered, but not really anything going for them to move them up or down above, the teams above them or below the teams below them like Chicago and Arizona. At number 29, moving up 2 spots is Columbus. They go 2-2 on the week, 4-5-1 in their last 10. So a similar situation to San Jose. Marginal victories are really all you need to move up when you're in this part of the ranking. So they get that. They move from 31 to 29. I guess they'll take it because they don't really have too much going for them on the positive end of things this season. At number 28, the same spot as last week, is Montreal. They go 0-3 this week. They're 3-6-1 in their last 10. It's been a rough little stretch for the Habs, but it's kind of the same spot they've been in roughly all year. They're kind of gearing up for the trade deadline. I think they probably still have a couple more pieces that they'll likely move on from, whether that's Jake Allen, whether that's one of their D-men, maybe Mike Matheson. I doubt we see him move, but there's probably some things still to be done there for Montreal. And frankly, at this point, they got 30 games left, but their season's pretty much done at this point. Maybe 25 games left. I guess I'm a little late on that. But nonetheless, Montreal, same spot at number 28. Number 27 also moves up 2 spots, and that's the Anaheim Ducks. They go 1-2 on the week. They're also 5-4-1 in their last 10, like the San Jose Sharks. So again, marginal victory is going to get you moved up, and Montreal going 0-3 and them going 1-2 definitely helps that. Again, nothing really crazy happening for the Ducks. Just didn't feel that it was fair to have them below both Columbus and Montreal. So they move up a couple spots. I think this is one of the higher rankings they've had in the last probably 2 months since their decent start to the year. So they will take it. They're 27. We'll see if they can hang on to this one. At number 26, dropping 2 spots, are the New York Islanders. They have that brutal loss in the Stadium Series game. They have since won a game, but they also lost one in that time. They're 3-4-3 in their last 10. And frankly, they just are not performing well enough at all to make up the ground they need to make the playoffs. There's plenty of teams in the Metro and in the East in general that are hunting that spot down, whether it's New Jersey, whether it's Detroit trying to hang on to the wild card spot, whether it's Tampa Bay. I mean, there's a handful of teams. Even Washington's kind of getting into the mix there. I think they're back up to like 4th in the Metro. So plenty of teams hunting for that spot. If you're only going 1-1-1, you have a huge lead in a massive game like the Stadium Series and you blow that away. There's really no excuse for that. It's a rough week for the Islanders, and because of that, they drop a couple spots to number 26. Number 25 moves up 2 spots. They're 3-1 on the week and actually 6-4-0 in their last 10. One of the better stretches of the season for Buffalo. Ugo Pekka-Luukkonen. Jesus, the second time in 2 days I've done that. Ugo Pekka-Luukkonen has been playing pretty well as of late. He's kind of solidified himself as the starting guy for probably the rest of the season. I'm sure we'll still see some more of Eric Comrie and maybe even a bit more of Devin Levi, but he's definitely the guy down the stretch. Again, I don't think Buffalo's really got a shot at making a playoff run. They have a lot of room to cover if they want to do something like that, but I think the goal for them is just generally putting themselves in the right direction heading into next year. This has obviously been a pretty disappointing year for them after the way they finished last year. Just a few points out of a playoff spot, much higher expectations. So we'll see if they can continue this upward trajectory toward the end of the year here, but I don't really think they're playing for all too much at this point. So All that being said, it is good to see them getting wins because they're no longer in that stage of the rebuild where they need these super high picks. They should be at least contesting a playoff spot. So we'll see if they can keep it up. This week was really good for them. They move up a couple spots to number 25. Number 24 also moves up a spot. They went 3-0 on the week, but they're just 4-4-2 in their last 10, and that's my Washington Capitals. Again, it's been a good week for them. They beat up on the Lightning pretty good, which was nice to see. Again, they're not entirely out of this playoff race yet, which I don't think they're in the same spot as Buffalo. I would probably like to see them lose a few more games, of course, while Ovechkin can score in as many of them as possible. But it's been good results-wise for the Caps. Can't really complain. Charlie Lindgren's been pretty good on the week. Again, I don't know that I see them making it into the playoff spots, but they're still right there fighting for it. So we'll see what happens for Washington. But for this week, it was a good one, 3-0, and they move up a spot to number 24. Number 23, a team sitting in the same spot as last week. This next few teams was kind of hard for me to gauge, but it's Ottawa at 23. They go 2-1-1 on the week. They continue to a bit and have been playing pretty well over the last 2 weeks, really. 6-3-1 in their last 10, just enough teams in front of them also performing decently that I couldn't really move them up the board, despite the fact that they've got 5 points over the course of 4 games, which is better than they've done for most of the year. So Ottawa, a good little stretch here, just not quite enough for me to bump them out of this 23 spot. We'll see if next week they're able to propel themselves up another spot or two. They're in a similar boat as Ottawa, though. I don't think they're really in a position where they need a super high draft pick. Of course, they'll take it, but I'd rather see them make some positive headway on, good results heading into next year, finding who their true core pieces are. One thing with Ottawa that's always been a struggle is they don't really seem to have an identity like some of these other teams do. It's like Brady Tkachuk's your captain. Then you have a bunch of really skilled, not all that physical players like Josh Norris, like Drake Batherson, Thomas Chabot. Like what is Ottawa exactly looking for? I think that's something they definitely need to solidify in the offseason. But in general, this week and this last couple weeks for them has been decent, but they do sit at number 23. Number 22, sorry, a bit long winded there, but 22 also staying in the same spot is Seattle. They only have 2 games this week. They go 1-0-1, which they'll take 3 points in 4 games. They're 5-3-2 in their last 10, and they're certainly not dead in this Western Conference playoff race just yet. But as you'll see, a lot of the upcoming teams are also West Conference, so they got a ways to go. I mean, they have a lot of good teams in front of them. They have kind of the momentum sliding against them. They had that really good run through December up to the Winter Classic, and then after that, it kind of tailspinned off. So we'll see if the Kraken can maintain this. They need to win at probably a 70% winning percentage pace at least if they want to see themselves get even close to a wild card spot. But it's been decent for them this week. They need to continue it. They stay at number 22. Number 21, the last of these teams staying in the same spot, is Calgary. They also have a positive record, 2-1-0 on the week. They are 6-4-0 in their last 10. Jacob Markstrom been very good, of course. There's all the trade rumors around this team, whether it's Noah Hannafin, Chris Tanev, Jacob Markstrom. I mean, even Nazem Kadri's name's been thrown in there a bit. So we'll see what is to be left of this Calgary Flames team come March 9th, I believe, is the day after the trade deadline. But for now, they're still in the fight. I don't see this team making a push for the playoff, especially because of the number of names that are going to be probably offloaded over the remainder of the year. But this week for them was decent. They go 2-1, and they stay in the same spot at number 21, fittingly. Number 20, dropping 3 spots despite a 1-1-1 week, is Pittsburgh. They're 4-4-2 in their last 10, and frankly, some of the teams that were just behind them had really good weeks, and I could not keep them ahead of those teams. So not really too much to discuss about Pittsburgh. The goaltending's still been really good for them. They just need to pick up kind of everything else. There was some games this week where they had individually solid performances from guys like Chris Letang. One game, Tristan Jarry had a fantastic game. You got to bundle that together into the same game, and those same players having those good performances. You can't rely on just one guy at a time winning you games. That's just not going to be consistent, and that's the struggle, as we've discussed damn near every week, that the Penguins have had. They just have not found any consistency whatsoever. We'll see if they can find it moving forward, but they're starting to be a real outside-in shot at the playoffs. And of course, now we have the Jake Gensel rumors kind of swirling all over the place as well. So we will see what happens in Pittsburgh. It's definitely going to be an interesting final stretch for them, but they drop a few spots this week to number 20. Number 19, another team dropping, is New Jersey. They go 1-2 on the week. They have that Stadium Series win, so it's good to see them not do what the Islanders did and completely throw it away. But aside from that, not a good week from them, and they're just 4-5-1 in their last 10. They need a goalie. I don't know if Jacob Markstrom is still on the table for them. I don't know what exactly happened there, but whether it's Soros, whether it's Markstrom, whether it's Linus Allmark, who's now been rumored to be potentially available from Boston for some depth in exchange there, whatever it is, New Jersey needs a goalie. Nico Dawes has been inconsistent when he's good. He tends to be really good when he's bad. It's really not all that pretty. We know Vitek Vanecek's issues. We know Akira Schmid's issues. They can't rely on this other rookie to come in and play all their games. It's just not a recipe for success whatsoever. So they need a goalie. It's the same thing we've been preaching about them all year long. If they get that, I think they'll be in decent shape. But for now, it's kind of tough because they can't keep pucks out of their own net, and it's hard to win games when that's the case. So a couple spots drop from number 16 to number 19 this week for New Jersey. Now, on the flip side of this, some of the teams that jumped them, number 18 moving up 2 spots is Minnesota. Minnesota goes 2-1-1 on the week. They're 6-3-1 in their last 10. A big win against the Oilers last night. I mean, that is one of the better teams in the entire league. They're still fighting for a playoff spot. They're not. I don't really think Edmonton's falling out of a playoff spot. Like, come on now, is that really happening? Probably not. But they're a really good team. They're only third in the Pacific, so it's not like they're not fighting for positioning. And Minnesota goes in and takes care of business. They didn't really dominate the game. They kind of, they might have paid off Calvin Pickard. I don't really know, but a win's a win, and they're going to take it, especially against that Edmonton team. They are definitely back into the mix for a playoff spots. Frankly, they're right there with teams like St. Louis, with Nashville, with Los Angeles. It's going to be a dogfight down to the very bitter end for those Western Conference teams, and I'm kind of hoping Minnesota makes it in just so that we can see them inevitably exit in the first round once again. But a good week for them. They move up 2 spots to number 18. Number 17 also moving up 2 spots, 3-1 on the week. They're also 6-3-1 in their last 10, and that's Los Angeles, the team that was so high up on this board earlier in the year has finally started to climb back after being in the mid third row here. The goaltending's probably still an issue for them. Again, that goalie carousel of Markstrom, Saros, and maybe Linus Ullmark. LA's probably going to be a destination for one of the three of them if they all move. Cam Talbot, despite his really good start, has completely fallen off, and of course now is not really even playing. Dave Riddick, you can't rely on Big Save Dave. He's not Big Save Dave anymore by any means. He's had some good games here and there, but that's not your guy going into the playoffs for game one. So something's going to happen for LA there. The stretch has been good. It's reinforced the fact that they need to go get that goalie because despite the lack of goaltending they have, they're still finding ways to win games, which just reinforces how good of a roster this team has from the net out, right? So we'll see what LA does. It was a good week for them. They move up a couple spots to number 17. Now on to the better half of the board. Number 16 dropping 2 spots is St. Louis. They go 1-2 on the week. Of course, one of those losses coming at the hands of Toronto, who has been just a buzzsaw lately. But St. Louis 6-4-0 in their last 10. I didn't really want to punish this team too bad, despite the negative record on the week. But again, some teams around them just performing too well for me to keep them at that same spot at 14 that they were last week. So they drop a few spots here. They've been playing pretty well. At the time I'm recording this, I'm kind of cheating, right? It's 4 o'clock on Saturday, so a little bit late. The Saturday games don't count, but they just got smoked by Detroit. So that's not good for their ranking heading into next week. But again, their hands are wiped clean of that loss to Detroit for now. We'll see what all it means for them next weekend. But a decent week for the Blues. They got to keep it going, though, if they want to find themselves in the playoff again, because LA, Minnesota, Seattle, Calgary, all in the hunt. So they have no room to let off the gas. They do that a bit this week, and they drop a couple spots as a result. At number 15, moving up 3 spots, and this team goes 3-0 on the week. They're 5-4-1 in their last 10, and it's the team that has a member of that goalie carousel. It's the Nashville Predators, and UC Saros has been fantastic over this stretch. That game earlier in the week, I think against Los Angeles, maybe on Thursday, he was dynamite. He's been dynamite really. The latter half of the year was not a great start for him, but he has proven his value in spades to this team, and they are going to get a king's ransom in return for him. He's still relatively young. We know exactly what he's capable of. We know what his potential is. So he's the biggest piece of this Nashville Predators team, and frankly, it's going to be a big loss if they do trade him. But again, they're going to bring a lot of assets in return. And again, he's been one of, if not the biggest parts of their success over this recent stretch. Again, 3-0. 5-4-1 in their last 10. They move up 3 spots to number 15. At number 14, dropping 2 spots, despite only playing 2 games this week, is Philadelphia. They do go 1-1, but the game they win is against Chicago, so not really adding too much value to that. And then again, the game they lose, despite it being an outdoor game, I know, don't come at me too hard, but it's still a pretty tough loss on a pretty big stage. You'd like to see a bit of a better effort. Now, I know people are going to say Sam Harrison didn't have a great game in that one. Fully understood. Nonetheless, you definitely want to get a win there, and they're in a similar spot as the teams out west. They're in a divisional playoff spot for the time being, but again, Jersey breathing down their throats. Tampa Bay are down their back. Tampa Bay, Detroit. Toronto is not entirely out of the wild card mix yet. The Islanders, the Capitals, like there's all these teams out east that are still going to be fighting for a playoff spot down to the last game. Philly does not have any room to let off the gas, much like St. Louis or LA. So they need to keep the gas going. They need to keep the wins coming. And again, it's only going to be tougher with a tandem of Sam Ersson and Cal Peterson. We'll see if they're able to maintain it, but for this week, they did have to drop a few spots to number 14. Number 13, and this was kind of an adjustment after last week, dropping 4 spots. They go 0-3 on the week. It was not good for Tampa Bay. They are now 5-5 in their last 10, which is fine, but again, they're in a wild card spot, so they don't have room for just playing 500 hockey, and you certainly cannot lose 3 games in a row, especially not against teams like Washington, a team that is not dead in the water yet when it comes to the playoff race, and you give up 2 points to them kind of for free. I mean, it wasn't that competitive of a game. It did end up closer than Washington probably needed to let it be, but um, just 2 points there in particular that you can't give up, and that's not even mentioning the other 2 games they had this week. One of those, of course, was the absolute ass whooping to Florida that they had on Saturday, the same day as the first Stadium Series game. So, not a good week whatsoever for Tampa Bay, a rough week in particular for Andrei Vasilevsky, who did not have good numbers throughout it. They need to maintain the pressure that they've had on some of these teams all year long. Of course, Nikita Kucherov is really dragging this team by the jerseys and just trying to throw them into the playoff bucket. If he can continue that, they're probably still going to find a way to make it just because of the year he's having. But need a little more from Vasi. Need a little more from the defense in general. I know they're without Sergachev, but just some hurdles going over here for Tampa Bay. If they continue to lose, they're going to fall down this board quite quickly. I kind of see this in the same realm as I saw LA's losing streak. Earlier in the year. So we'll see what happens for Tampa. But for this week, they do drop 4 spots to number 13. Number 12, and this team moves up 3 spots. And again, they just beat the crap out of St. Louis today. That game does not count for this, but they will be moving up the board as a result for next week. And that's Detroit. Detroit went 3-0 on the week. They're 6-3-1 in their last 10. Dylan Larkin's back. Patrick Kane is looking like Showtime Patrick Kane. All their depth is playing really well. Alex Line has been phenomenal. Like everything's going really well for this Detroit team, and they sit in a playoff spot because of it. And frankly, I don't know which team behind them is going to catch them if they continue playing this way. If they don't, who knows, right? But for now, it's been a good stretch for them. A really good week in particular, and their record over their last 10 is just fine. I think it more than justifies them moving up, so they go from 15 to 12 on this week's ranking. At number 11, this team, a dramatic drop. This is the biggest movement, either positive or negative, on the week. They go 0-4. It's their first 4-game losing streak of the year, but losses against teams that really aren't all that concerning. Excuse me. Um, Colorado takes care of business. The Jets take care of business. They're playing some better teams, but the efforts in some of these games have just not quite been there. It's Vancouver. They go from number 1 to number 11. They're still 4-5-1 over their last 10, despite this 4-game losing streak this week. But the top part of this ranking is just so damn competitive. You cannot go on a 4-game winning streak. And as a result, they drop a whole lot. So I'm sure I'm going to hear this from Canucks fan or about this from Canucks fans in the comments, but I just could not justify keeping them above all of the teams that have yet to be named. You guys will kind of see my reasoning for that as we go finish this out, but not a good week at all from Vancouver. I'm hoping they can kind of rewrite the ship this weekend and get back on the winning side of things, but a really tough week from them. They dropped 10 spots to number 11. Now, number 10 is in a similar boat. They move down 7 spots. They go 0-2-2, and that's Dallas. They're in a similar camp, right? They played some solid teams this week. They played Boston, in which, Jeremy Swayman kind of stole that game from them. They play Edmonton. Like, they're playing tough teams, but you still can't lose 4 of 4 games. I know they get 2 points out of those 4 games thanks to overtime points, but just not a good week in general from the Stars. They're 5-3-2 over their last 10, so that's not too bad, right? They're safely in a playoff spot. I don't see this team going anywhere, and I still picture them as cup contenders, but in general, you can't have a week like this and not drop pretty significantly when you're in the top part of this ranking. So that's the result really for both Dallas and Vancouver. And we move right along to number 9, a team that didn't have a great week last week, but a pretty good one this week, and that's Colorado. They go 2-0-1. They're only 4-4-2 in their last 10, but again, impressive win over the Canucks. They're back kind of looking like the team they were prior to the All-Star break. Justus Annunen with a really good game the other night, which is good to see again. Georgiev needs as much rest as he can get leading into the playoffs because we've seen that he can kind of get tired. At least it seems that way. So good to see him get some rest. I don't want to, have the Avs ride used to Sandin in too much. Georgiev's still their guy, of course, but in general, good to get him some rest. The results were much better this week. They moved back up from 11 to number 9. Into the top row here, number 8. Similar story for this team. Last week they didn't have that great a week. This week they improved quite a bit, and that's Winnipeg. They go 3-1. They're 5-4-1 in their last 10. Really the same story as the Avs, right? Like they were struggling to score after the All-Star break. They kind of regathered that this week. Connor Hellebuck with a much better week than his week last week, and Laurent Brossoit had one really good game this week as well. So things just headed back in the right direction for Winnipeg. I kind of pictured these two teams moving back up this week. Anyway, it's not really all that likely that any of these teams in this grouping are going to have down weeks for consistent periods of time, but the Avs and the Jets both turn it right back around after a rough week, so they sit at number 9 and number 8 respectively. Number 7, I had a tough time with what to do with this team. I had a tough time really with the top 11 in general. Vancouver dropping so much threw like such a wrench into this ranking. It was kind of crazy. I muddled over this for like an hour last night. But number 7, 2-2 on the week. They're 5-5 in their last 10, and that's Vegas. I really didn't know what to do with this team, man. Like I didn't know if I wanted the Jets above them or below them. I didn't know if I wanted the Avs above them or below them. I really didn't know whether or not I wanted to drop them below Vancouver, have Vancouver go behind. Like the top 10, 11 teams was a mess, but I think Vegas at 7 is appropriate. They're playing still some pretty solid hockey without a ton of their big name guys. Of course, Mark Stone goes on IR. There was a tweet I saw earlier today of like Vegas back office management beating the crap out of their players around the trade deadline so they could free up cap space, which was pretty funny. But yeah, they're doing this without Jack Eichel doing it without Mark Stone. Shea Theodore just got back, which is terrifying that they've been so sound defensively without him for quite a long time now. So, despite the 2-2 record, I didn't want to drop Vegas too much. So they do stay at number 7. The loss against Toronto was a tough one, though. I will admit that. That was kind of the one thing that made me think about dropping them a good bit. But I think keeping them where they're at for now is fine. If they have another week like this and Winnipeg and or Colorado or Dallas kind of regains, they'll probably drop. But for this week, I think 7 is good for the Golden Knights. Number 6, and this team moves up 7 spots. I think this is the biggest gain of the week, and that is the Toronto Maple Leafs. They're 4-0 on the week. They're 8-2 in their last 10. They have been cooking since the All-Star break, and frankly, since the Morgan Rielly suspension. It would have been hilarious if they came back with Mo's first game and they lost, but they didn't. And they had the second half of the back-to-back in Vegas, and they just roll over the Golden Knights. I mean, that was one of the more impressive periods of hockey we've seen from any of the teams this year. And it's against a really, really strong team in Vegas. So, very impressive stuff from the Leafs. I know I'm going to hear about this in the comments because Leafs fans are everywhere, but plenty of you probably think they deserve to be higher. And frankly, there's a decent argument for it. I just think the teams above them in the top 5 still doing well enough to keep them there. So, it's a good jump for the Leafs. They move up 7 spots from number 13 to number 6. Number 5, the team that's probably going to piss Leafs fans off the most is Boston. 2-0-2 over the last week, 4-3-3 in their last 10. So, not a great last 10 record, but a really impressive week from them. And again, they but beat some pretty solid teams. So good stuff from Boston. Very curious to see what happens with these rumors around Linus Ullmark. I do think they definitely need some forward depth, and he might be the asset that makes the most sense to move if that happens. But I just don't know, man. I mean, Ullmark and Swayman have been such a big reason for their success over the last 18 months. Seeing them move on from one of those two pieces would be really weird, but Swayman's been so good, so it kind of makes sense for them. They definitely need the depth. Whether it's at forward on defense, I think a forward makes a lot more sense, but we'll see what they do. This week was solid for them. Didn't want to move them down despite the fact that the Leafs have been so good, so what more fitting two teams to have right next to each other than the Leafs and the Bruins, right? We'll see what happens next week, but for now, the Bruins are at 5, just a hair above the Leafs. At number 4, this team also had a really good week, and they've had a really impressive last 10 as well, and that's the New York Rangers. They had that incredible comeback in the Stadium Series game. Their next game's against Dallas. They take care of Dallas. Like, they've looked so good over their last stretch of 10 games, and this week just continued that. Of course, Shesterkin looks to be back. He had won, I think, like 40 saves on 41 shot performances this week. Like, just unbelievable stuff from really everyone on this team. They had that game against the Devils, which, of course, a huge rivalry game, and they make it look like they were playing an AHL team. So, not great from Nico Dawes in that game, of course. I think the Devils actually outshot the Rangers quite a bit, and of course, Shesterkin had to be very good in that game. But the win's a win, and they'll take it. They've been really good over their last stretch. 3-0 this week. They move up 4 spots to number 4. Now, number 3, and I struggled with whether or not to have the Rangers above or below these guys, but it is Edmonton. They go 3-1 on the week. They're 5-4-1 in their last 10. But again, playing some tough competition, still getting the results. Of course, the game against Minnesota is not a great one. Calvin Pickard, you need to make some saves if you want to keep your NHL job. Otherwise, Jack Campbell's right there knocking on the door, right? So we'll see what happens with their goaltending. Stuart Skinner is obviously still their guy for the playoffs once they get there, but it's been good from Edmonton. A better pace after that 16-game stretch where they were just unbeatable against some lesser teams, but we'll let it slide, right? We'll let it slide. It's still 16 wins in a row. The Oilers have been really good. They're not going anywhere. I wouldn't be surprised to see them jump into second in the division by the time the playoffs roll around. Hell, they might even catch up to Vancouver. Who knows? This team has McDavid and Draisaitl after all. Like, let's be realistic. But yeah, Oilers have been good. They sit at number 3. Number 2, and I feel bad for these guys because it was probably right to have them at 1 this week, but the team at number 1 has been just as good as the Rangers, the Leafs, and they were much higher on the board prior to this. So at number 2, partially because they lost to the team at number 1, is Florida. They've been very good over their last stretch, 2-1 on the week, 8-2 over their last 10. But the team at number 1, you guys can figure it out based on who's not yet on the board, is the Carolina Hurricanes. They have been unbelievable. They, of course, have that game against Florida earlier in the week, which was kind of my decider for 1 versus 2, depending on, what all happened later in the week. And, of course, there were no real games that affected the number 1 spot based on what you guys can see in front of you. So that was kind of a battle for 1 in that game, and it was an absolutely crazy goalie duel. Sebastian Aho, of course, ends up being the hero, but Pyotr Kochetkov has been really, really good for these guys. The team as a whole has been playing fantastic, dominant Carolina Hurricanes hockey as they have for the last 3-4 years. We'll see if they can convert it to some playoff success, but rightfully so, the Hurricanes are finally number 1 on this list. I don't want to totally gloss over the Panthers. They've been playing really good for the last 2 months. I mean, these guys have been unbelievable. Bobrovsky's been sound and consistent, which is not something we always see from him, so that's good to see in the regular season. Hopefully that doesn't mean it won't happen in the playoffs for them, but both of these teams have just been phenomenal. It's been really fun to watch both of them, and I know it wasn't the most entertaining game from a goal-scoring standpoint, but as someone who's a goalie themselves and loves watching a goalie game, that 1-2 matchup between the Hurricanes and Panthers was a chef's kiss, right? So that's it for these rankings. Let me know what you guys think in the comments section down below. Specifically, some of you fans of the bigger teams here, the Rangers, the Leafs, the Bruins, the Canucks. What do you guys think? Are these guys all too high? Are they too low? Does Carolina deserve to be at number 1 over the Florida Panthers? Let's air it all out in the comments section down below. Leave a like if you enjoy these rankings. Subscribe as well if you enjoy it. It is free, and we will talk to you guys tonight after a pretty big and entertaining 13-game slate for the recap. So thanks as always for watching. We'll talk to you guys soon.